Yo, what is up? It's your boy Willymane. Here on another Solomon's Current video. Let me just move my camera over. But today's topic is the violence breaks out at a LA school or Gay Pride Month recognition. So, me personally, I don't choose sides on any of this stuff. I'm just here to report what was seen, and we'll play the video.
Oh boy. Wow. Okay.
All right. So, as you can see in the video, it was a bunch of adults at a school board meeting. They were having a disagreement, and instead of being able to talk like civilized people, they ended up fighting. So, I'm not going to choose sides on which one was right or wrong. To be honest, it's adult problems that are being pushed. And to be honest, some of the arguments against a lot of this has been uh, so one of the streamers, his name is Nick Merckx, I believe. He was saying that we should leave the kids alone, and he was essentially taken off the. He had a item in one of the Call of Duty item shops, and they disabled his items due to the statement that he said being hateful. Me personally, I do not believe that Call of Duty has any rights to call anybody hateful, since anytime I log into that game, the amount of hard R's that I'm called in that game just for speaking with people not even seeing my face is wild. We also have a lot of hate speech and hateful things that were going on during Twitch streaming, which most of the time I don't even stream on Twitch because of that whole situation and how Twitch handled the situation. So if you're not familiar with what the hate speech and stuff was going on Twitch, essentially black streamers were being targeted, and there were bots coming into their chats and spamming racial slurs, and Twitch did nothing to stop it. Essentially, what had to happen was a lot of streamers who knew how to block chats and things like that had to make YouTube videos telling people, hey, this is how you get rid of all these hate speeches and everything like that, which in turn made it harder for these streamers to get views, et cetera, because one of the ways that you would block these hateful speeches and everything like that is people would have to go through a verification process to be able to even comment in your stream. So if you look at the top, let's just say 10 to 20 people who are on Twitch as the highest earners, they never had to deal with that. And you can probably guess why they did not have to deal with it. But to be honest, I think that all this stuff is kind of being taken out of context in a whole. I wouldn't say I got an argument, but I had a conversation with somebody on IG about the whole situation, and they were saying, well, as LGBTQ plus, we are just trying to not get bullied, et cetera, and we just want to live normal lives. But to be honest, bullying in schools, I grew up with it. A lot of people I know grew up with it, and nobody really did anything to stop it. I mean, children are going to be children regardless. of what you try to teach them. I think that in the grand scheme of things, certain people just want their kids to go to school just to learn about math, science, etc., etc. Um, I'm not opposed to the whole Pride Month thing. It is what it is because every month now is some kind of month to represent people across different ethnicities, backgrounds, etc., etc. I think that in general, if people are opposed to their children learning about LGBTQ plus, then that's their own prerogative. But it doesn't seem like it's. It seems like it's one sided, to be honest, because when people come out and say, "Hey, I want my kids to learn about math, science. I want my kids to go to school and not have to worry about protesters fighting and et cetera, et cetera." It's just imagine on both sides. You come home from protesting, and your kid, your parent has a black eye, or your parent's in the hospital, or your parent went to jail that day because people probably did get arrested for inciting fights, et cetera, et cetera. That in itself is going to be traumatizing for a child. Um, Having to deal with that, I think that a lot of this stuff is getting out of hand at this point because as a black American, you know, we deal with a lot of discrimination, et cetera, et cetera, and nobody's out there fighting for that. We had the Black Lives Matter movement, which ended up being just a heist for somebody to make money off of it. And I think that's just ignorance on the black communities because we just are so trusting when it comes to like, oh, anything that's pro black, it's got to be supported, et cetera, et cetera. And to be honest, nobody's fighting for us at the end of the day. So it's very one-sided when it comes to things like that because people will fight tooth and nail for the LGBTQ plus, but then when it comes to Black Americans and how they're being treated and how they're being treated over the course of many years in America, everybody's just kind of like it is what it is. But I don't want to get too much into it. I was just here to talk on the subject, but I think that people as a whole need to look at the whole big picture of things, right? So, in the grand scheme of things, everybody's being discriminated against, everybody's being manipulated, et cetera, et cetera. No one group is better than the other. No one group is being targeted more than the other group. And once we come to realize that the big picture is everybody is being used as pawns to do whatever bidding people want to do just to incite fights and hate and everything like that, then maybe we can take a step back and actually have an agreement, right? I think the big reason why a lot of people are pushing back on the LGBTQ plus movements is one, a lot of people who are influencers in the community are just like, well, we're being discriminated against. And then when you bring up a subject where it's like, okay, you're being discriminated against, but what about blacks? And then it's kind of like, oh, well, you guys are being discriminated too, but you guys kind of need to do your own thing to get the improvements and changes that you want. And that's to me is selfish. Um, I know another thing that people were up in arms about were drag queens being in schools, reading books. Personally, I don't think that anything about a drag show is meant for children to be watching. Um, if you're a drag queen, that's cool and all, but like a lot of people don't want their kids being confused, as they say. And to be honest, when you think about a child's mind, they're coming to school to learn, and then you have drag queens reading them books and some kids who were raised differently. Not saying that if a child is raised in a home that doesn't want to be, essentially, like if your child is raised and they don't know what a drag queen is, they probably shouldn't be learning what a drag queen is when they go to school. So I think that that's something that should definitely not be in schools. That's my personal views because what is the point? What is this? teaching children. And people will have the argument is like, oh, well, they're just regular people, this, and that, and that's cool and all. Like, I don't knock anybody's life choices at the end of the day, but a lot of people who are not into the LGBTQ plus community, whether they be Christians or just they just don't have that in their families, or they just have different views, they should not be seen as hateful. And I think that's another thing too, is anything that opposes the community as far as the LGBTQ is looked at as hate, is looked at as a phobia, etc., etc. And I already think that the word phobia is thrown around way too much, and it's such a common word. The same thing with misogyny and all these other things that we tend to talk about on this channel. It's more so that people do not want to take accountability for the things that they're doing. And when questioned about it, they just deny, 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 deny. So, in the grand scheme of things, this whole situation, I mean, I grew up in California, so I know how it is out there. I don't have any problems with the LGBTQ plus community. Um, Growing up, I had people who were come from different backgrounds and were just more understanding. The fact that this happened in LA is a little wild because of California's background and just the stigma behind people who live in California, et cetera, et cetera. But what do you guys think? I think that on my last statement, that regardless of what you believe in, that you should not be fighting as adults when it comes to the things. I think both sides should be held accountable. Um, because it's not just one side. We always try to make it into one side's doing this and one side's the aggressor and one side's the pacifist side. And that's not what it is. There's no way that you can say, oh, this is only Republicans and Proud Boys and et cetera, et cetera. At some point, people were having arguments, two adults, and somebody just decided to start swinging or fighting due to their own lack of self control. And I feel like all these disagreements could be discussed and resolved to a certain extent. So the big thing is say they said, okay, we're going to recognize Pride Month in the school. That's cool, right? And let's just say we're going to put anybody who wants to participate in Pride Month in the gym, or we're going to have a certain day that we recognize it and they allow people to choose whether or not they want to show up to the event. If you say that you do not want to go to the event, does that make you a phobic, or does that make you uninterested in something that you do not live or stand by? Like, you can't force people to accept everything, especially in the world that we live in now. And that should be okay, right? If if I am a straight male and I don't want to go to a LGBTQ plus bar or club, that's my choice as an adult, right? But I think the big thing is children aren't being given the choice and things are being pushed onto other people's children who may be like, well, my kid is young. Like, kids don't know much about anything when they're kids. Like, most of the time, they don't even want to be at school, or when they get to school, they are just like, what is going on here? What is all this about? And they're confused. So, to try to treat children like adults and not give, I mean, to be honest, they're not really giving children the choices, because, I mean, they could ask the children how do they feel about the situation and be like, hey, if you guys want to learn more about this, we're going to have an event where we can explain things, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if the parent chooses that they do not want the school teaching their children that, then that should be up to the parents. If people are raising their children different, we look at the society how it is now, and there's a lot of children out there, and there's a lot of adults who were not raised right or taught the wrong things, et cetera, et cetera. That's why we have people in jail. That's why we have people who rob, steal, gang bang, etc., etc. And it's up to a parent to choose how their child lives their lives. And I believe that, and I'll stand behind that. If anybody disagrees, then they can comment in the section below and we can have a conversation because I'm not going to argue with anybody. But this is just based on also feedback that I've gotten from other people. I've had this conversation with many people, and I've never said like, "Yo, I'm going to fight you because you believe this, and that." As I said before, everybody has their own right to what they believe in, and if you do not believe in something, then you shouldn't be seen as somebody who is a bigot or a phobic just because you don't agree with somebody on something that they feel strongly about. Um, when you go to a debate team in high school, it's a debate. People feel strongly about what they believe in, but nobody's starting to throw fists because somebody said something that disagrees with you. We as people are built different in all aspects of life. Everybody has different backgrounds. Everybody has different personalities, et cetera, et cetera. And you're not always going to mix with people, so that's okay to have a disagreement. But I think that just based on how Call of Duty acted with Nick Merckx, it's a one sided thing, right? Because it'll be like, oh well, what he said is hateful and it goes against this community, right? But we won't hold people accountable for calling blacks on their same platform the N word because I believe at some point in time you were able to report people for derogatory terms, et cetera, et cetera. And I think last time I was playing Call of Duty, that wasn't even an option. You could literally report people for cheating, uh, like maybe if their name was something like weird or sexually oriented, stuff like that. But like as far as reporting voice chat and everything like that, I pretty sure they took that out. They may have brought it back, but I guarantee you, no matter how many times they put that button in there, I'm still gonna get called a hard R on Call of Duty no matter what. And a lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, Call of Duty is a toxic culture, et cetera, et cetera." So to pick and choose somebody who didn't say anything with derogatory terms or anything that was like hateful in my eyes, it it's kind of wild. So the big thing is they banned Nick Merckx, and then Dr. Disrespect was saying, "Hey, like if that's the way that you're gonna go, I'm gonna get rid of it too." So without me ranting for too long, I just wanted to get on here and give my personal views. We will be talking about a lot more. I've been a little bit MIA from the channel because I believe that a lot of the arguments that people are having are not necessarily beneficial to my mental health, to say the least. I think that we are growing up in a society where people just believe that they can just do whatever they want and have no consequences or repercussions. And when you tell somebody, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be doing this because now it feels okay, but in the long run, it's going to potentially have negative effects on your life, people want to say, well, you don't know and anything can happen. But as a lot of people have said before, we've been on this planet for how many years, and there's certain things that work from trial and error, and there's certain things that don't work. If somebody came up tomorrow and was like, yo, square wheels are better than circle wheels, sure, somebody may prove it right. I do believe somebody did make a bike with square wheels instead of circle wheels, but what is the point? If people are already using circle wheels and it's been proven to be effective, why are we trying to change the mold just to say, hey, we're different? I mean, I'm going to be on the channel a lot more. So if you guys have any gripes or complaints or disagreements, you can definitely leave a comment below. I will have a conversation with you. You can argue your views. I can tell you my views. And then at the end of the day, we're both going to go our separate ways and live our separate lives. But at the end of the day, everybody should be able to voice how they feel about things. And then the reality of the world, whether I'm right or you're wrong, or vice versa, it doesn't change much, right? It gives me a little more insight on how you believe and how you think and how things have happened in your life that have not necessarily happened in my life. And I just think that at the end of the day, we have to both agree to disagree at some point in time. And I think that people are not taking that to heart, right? So I guess this could be my welcome back to Solomon's Crown officially. And I'm looking forward to having many conversations with people on here to maybe get to the bottom of things. Uh, I don't think that we will solve every single problem, but I do believe that things can change for the better if people just stop taking themselves as the anchor point of change, right? So when I say that, I mean, I can say as much as I want, but unless I have a following, unless I believe and have strong facts behind the things that I have to say, then nothing will change, right? And I'm just at a loss of words at times because there's so much stuff going on in the world and we bicker and argue about things that not necessarily are changing the world for the better. Um, I could talk about all the things going on in the world right now that people probably don't even know about because they don't watch the news, they don't read, they don't care. I think that's the big thing to take away from a lot of the things going on in the world is that people just don't care. We just do things based on how everybody feels at the moment, and then we don't think about the long term repercussions of our actions. And then when the consequences come, because a lot of people on social media are doing things without the consequences being in the back of their mind, they're just like, I'm winning right now, so this is what's going to work. But then when they're losing, it's everybody else's fault. And I was raised on the decisions that you make, all decisions, no matter whether it's good or bad, will have consequences. And you have to deal with the consequences when the consequences come. Now, with this specific situation, these people are just going to argue all the time, no matter what, because they're two different groups on two different spectrums. And the middle ground for both of these groups is just to be left alone at the end of the day. Um, but next time I will have a different subject. I just felt very strongly about this subject because I don't hate anybody. I can't bear any hate towards anybody. I don't feel like revenge is ever something that needs to be given out because at the end of the day, everybody's going through different things in their lives. And as a person who has grown to the level of calmness and inner peace that I'm at now, I can say that when I was younger, a lot of things that happened around me did influence my behaviors, and it can change you as a person if you don't have anybody at home or you don't have people who are in your life. And I mean, granted, I had my mother in my life and everything like that, but I did not have my father. There was a lot of lessons that I had to learn on my own due to the fact that I did not have my father in the house. And my grandparents tried to do the best that they could when they passed away. So a lot of things in life you will learn by yourself, and we have to look at it from not only our only from well, excuse me, can't talk, but we can't look at things based on like, oh, my life is fine because this and that. And you have to look at like, well, what did you have in your life that made you get to that point of understanding and peace, et cetera, versus somebody who doesn't have that, and what they can be influenced by, and what can change their lives for the better or for the worse. Because a lot of people will say at the end of the day, the only person who's going to have your back is you. And I can tell you firsthand, a lot of people have been in my life, but a lot of people have left my life. And at a certain point in times, the people who were in my life were influencing me. And I had to deal with the consequences. So we will see how all this stuff pans out. To be honest, I've kind of given up on people coming to mutual agreements just based on how social media has changed people to believe a lot of things that may not. or may be true. I think that misinformation is rampant. And while certain people have amazing lives, even though they make bad decisions, it's not going to be the same choice for everybody else. As I say, you cannot compare your life to somebody else who has not gone through the same things that you have gone through, or um, you just don't know what their situation is compared to yours. I could go fish tomorrow and get 20 fish, but the guy who comes after me could go and not get any fish because I caught the first 20 fish that were only the fish that were in that pond. So you have to look at life at different perspectives. Uh, Sorry if my analogies are not that great. It's early in the morning. I was hoping to catch Pop on, but he is currently in Japan and our time schedules do not always align. But thank you for stopping by. If you made it this far into the video, go ahead and like and subscribe. And I look forward to having many conversations with you guys over the course of the next couple years. As they say, Solomon's crown is something that is here to stay until we either get banned or deleted. So, peace.